Welcome to the deep dive. So you came to us with this really fascinating challenge to explore a theoretically sound prospect, sure, but maybe more importantly, to critique the profound cost of not adopting it.
Exactly.
We're talking about a system, one meticulously designed to, elevate society across pretty much every metric, economic, social, personal. So the big question today really is, what do we actually lose by simply not doing it?
It's such a critical question. And what's really striking here is that the cost, it isn't just financial, it's a profound and importantly, a quantifiable loss. Loss of human potential, of stability, and just overall well-being.
Right.
So our mission in this deep dive really is to lay out that stark contrast, evidence-backed,
Yeah.
between our current realities and the enormous potential offered by this integrated CKO, PTH, CIP, SCH framework. And we're drawing directly from the simulations and the research that you've shared with us.
Okay, so to understand what we might be losing, maybe we first need a quick reminder on what this integrated system actually is. CCO, PTH, CIP, and SCH. Let's start with CCO. What's the core idea there? What makes Creative Currency Octaves so different?
Well, the absolute core innovation of CCO, Creative Currency Octaves, is its ability to just completely eliminate the welfare cliff, that phenomenon that traps people.
Ah, right.
It's a dual currency system. So
Yeah.
you get universal basic units, let's say for essentials, housing, food.
Okay.
But here's the real game changer. You can convert those basic units into, well, unrestricted primary currency. And you do that through any form of productive contribution or creative work or community help.
Any contribution?
Any contribution,
Yeah.
which means any work you do always increases your total income. It always pays to work or contribute more. It fundamentally flips the incentive structure. It rewards effort instead of, sometimes penalizing it like current systems can.
Okay, so it's not just a safety net, it's actively empowering people,
Mm.
helping them contribute and grow without that fear of losing their basic support. That feels like a huge shift. And then we have public trust housing, PTH. How does that change things with housing? You mentioned acre equity.
Yeah, PTH completely reframes housing. It shifts it away from being primarily a speculative asset.
Like it often is now.
Exactly, towards being a community asset. These are community-owned, democratically governed housing developments. They're designed for long-term affordability, and they often integrate essential services right there, childcare, healthcare, things like that.
And acre equity, how does that work?
Right, acre equity is, well, it's pretty revolutionary. Instead of value being purely driven by market speculation, acre equity actually measures and distributes value based on land stewardship and productive use. So imagine earning equity, actual value for maybe maintaining shared green spaces or contributing to community infrastructure or even growing food locally.
Huh, not just waiting for the market to go up.
Precisely. It's about investing in the usefulness and the care of the land and the community itself, not just abstract market forces.
That's a really different way of thinking about homeownership or just living somewhere. Then there's the Citizen Internet Portal, CIP. That sounds like the tech part, the digital backbone for all this. What does it do?
It is, exactly. CIP is the secure digital infrastructure that connects everything. But it's not just, a government website spitting out information. It's meant to be an interactive platform for genuine democratic participation, for transparent governance.
How so?
It allows citizens to actually provide input on, well, everything from community budgets to policy decisions. It ensures accountability and lets people be directly involved in how their communities are run and how these economic systems like CCO and PTH actually function day to day.
Okay, so real-time informed citizen engagement. Got it. And the last piece, social zone harmonization, SZH. What does that add to the mix?
SEH is really about intelligently organizing communities. It's a framework to optimize outcomes, social, economic, environmental. Think of it as coordinated planning and resource allocation, but done smartly. It respects diverse preferences too, allowing for different zone classifications. You might have, say, an urban innovation zone next to a rural stewardship zone.
Different zones for different priorities?
Yeah, but all working together strategically, the idea is to maximize collective well-being across a whole area.
Okay, so each piece sounds pretty impactful on its own. CCO, PTH, CIP, SCH. But you mentioned something really critical earlier about their integration. What happens when these four work together?
That's where the magic really happens, if you look at the bigger picture. The simulations really hammer this home. They show these systems aren't just, additive. Their synergy actually amplifies the benefits, somewhere in the range of 40 to 60%.
Wow, 40 to 60% more.
Well, for instance, CCO's basic units can directly pay for PTH housing. That link alone helps reduce housing costs by around 40% when they're integrated. And then CIP provides that democratic governance layer for both CCO and PTH. It ensures community control and transparency across the board, so the collective effect is just far greater than the sum of the individual parts.
And you mentioned these aren't just theories. You shared results from, what was it, over 10,000 Monte Carlo simulations for this integrated system.
That's right, over 10,000 simulations testing the whole integrated CTO, PTH, CIP, SCH framework.
So what were the big results, the headlines from those sims?
The results are, frankly, quite compelling.
Uh-huh.
We're looking at a projected 98% poverty elimination rate,
98%.
98%, a median wealth across participants rising to around $82,000,
Right.
which is a huge leap from current baselines. And the Gini coefficient, which, for you listening, measures economic inequality. 0 is perfect equality. 1 is total inequality that drops to 0.27.
Which is significantly more equal than most developed nations now.
Significantly.
Yeah.
It indicates a far more equitable distribution of wealth. And, critically important, the system demonstrates really impressive stability. We saw 94% stability across all the scenarios we tested, even during severe economic shock tests, recessions, climate crises, you name it.
Okay. Those numbers paint a really powerful picture of what's possible. Now, here's where it gets, like you said, really interesting. We've seen what could be. Let's flip that coin. What are we actually losing by not doing this? What are the deep, often hidden costs of sticking with our current sort of fragmented systems?
This is really where the critique of inaction becomes incredibly stark. The costs are truly comprehensive. They touch, well, pretty much every aspect of society, our economy, our individual well-being, even our democratic health.
Okay, let's start with the economic costs. You mentioned trillions and lost opportunity, even waste. Take the war on drugs. I mean, the figure you shared. Over the past 71 years, the U.S. spent more than $1.5 trillion, inflation adjusted, on drug prohibition. That number is just hard to grasp.
It truly is. And it forces that crucial question. What have those trillions actually bought us? Because the data, when you look at it objectively, paints a pretty clear picture of failure. Since 1971, drug use is actually up 89%. Drug availability, up 178%. Associated violence, up 78%.
So it hasn't worked.
It demonstrably hasn't achieved its stated goals. And if we just continue on this same path for, say, another 25 years, the projections are staggering. $8.47 trillion in total costs, 2.65 million overdose deaths, 45 million incarcerations.
Okay.
Now, contrast that. If you integrate drug policy reform, sensible reform, into this CECO, PTH, CIP, SCH framework, the projections shift dramatically. A net benefit of over $5 trillion over 25 years. A remarkable 6.4 to 1 return on investment. Plus, and this is huge, a projected 90% reduction in overdose deaths.
90% reduction.
The cost of inaction here isn't abstract. It's measured in trillions of dollars wasted and, more importantly, millions of lives lost or ruined.
The contrast is just jarring.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears, but staying with economics. Our current housing system, HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, spends around $50 billion a year on rental assistance. What does that massive investment actually get people in the long run? Stability, wealth.
Well, unfortunately, the reality is that these programs, while maybe providing short-term shelter, often create zero wealth accumulation for the people participating.
Here.
Zero equity. They essentially foster a kind of perpetual dependency on subsidies, keeping people as renters indefinitely. And that's if you can even get the help. Waiting lists for assistance can stretch out for 3, 5, even 10 years in some places.
Leaving people stuck.
Exactly. PTH, on the other hand, it flips that script. It converts those housing subsidies into community assets. Our research indicates that a moderate investment, roughly equivalent to just 1 year of the current HUD rental assistance budget, could serve between 500,000 and 800,000 households within about 5 years. And crucially, while doing that, it would simultaneously generate somewhere between $150 to $200 billion in collective community wealth. And it reduces the per household cost by about 40% when it's integrated with CCO. So the cost of not adopting PTH, it's this ongoing massive wealth extraction from communities. It's preventing millions from building any kind of equity or long-term security.
Right. And earlier when we talked about CCO, you mentioned welfare cliffs. Can you unpack that a bit more? For someone listening, what's the real human cost of living in a system that has those cliffs?
Yeah, this is such a critical insight into how our current systems can actively, almost perversely, disincentivize progress. Traditional welfare systems can impose what economists call effective marginal tax rates over 100%.
Over 100%. How is that possible?
It means if you earn an extra dollar, maybe from working more hours or getting a small raise, you can actually lose more than a dollar in total benefits because you cross some arbitrary eligibility threshold.
So you're literally worse off for earning more money.
Exactly. It effectively traps people in poverty. It discourages work effort. It discourages seeking promotions or better jobs, because taking that step forward financially risks pushing you off a benefits claim, leaving you worse off overall. The cost of not adopting CCO, which eliminates these cliffs entirely, is the perpetuation of these systemic disincentives. It stifles economic mobility and keeps millions trapped in poverty, even when they're actively trying to improve their situation.
It's like the system is working against them. So, stepping back from specific programs like drugs or housing or welfare, what's the bigger picture, the overall economic toll of sticking with what we have versus embracing this integrated framework?
Well, the comparative analysis we did within the simulation framework paints a really clear picture. Our traditional welfare baseline, sort of modeling current approaches, only achieves about 23% poverty elimination. Median wealth hovers around $18,500. And the Gini coefficient is up at 0.41, indicating pretty significant inequality.
Okay, that's the baseline.
Now compare that to the integrated CCO, PTH, CIP, SEH system we discussed earlier. 98% poverty elimination. $82,000 median wealth. G90 down at 0.27. The cost of inaction economically is the persistence of this grinding cycle of poverty, deep wealth inequality, and just a massive amount of lost economic activity. For example, we found that every dollar invested in public trust funding within this integrated system generates a 2.86 times GDP multiplier effect.
Wow, nearly 3x multiplier.
Yeah, that's a huge economic stimulus effect that we're just leaving on the table by not doing this.
The economic costs are truly staggering, but this framework, it also talks a lot about human flourishing.
So what's the human cost, the social cost of not optimizing for that? What do we lose in terms of just collective well-being?
This is maybe even more profound than the economic costs in some ways. By not adopting this kind of integrated approach, the model suggests we miss out on something like a plus 47% improvement in the overall life satisfaction index.
A 47% jump in life satisfaction. Across the model population, yes. And that isn't just an abstract number. It translates into things like universal access to mental health support becoming feasible. It means a projected plus 52% increase in what we call social capital density, basically. More meaningful relationships, stronger community ties, and maybe most importantly, a plus 65% expansion of individual autonomy and choice in people's lives.
More freedom, more connection.
Exactly. So the psychological and social costs of inaction are deep. Less meaningful relationships, less actual freedom, and this pervasive sense of disempowerment that can spread across society. The true cost here is the perpetuation of so much preventable suffering and stagnation. It's holding back individuals, communities, society as a whole from reaching its full, vibrant potential.
And you mentioned CCO specifically values cultural and artistic contributions too.
Yeah.
What are we losing culturally by sticking with systems that maybe don't recognize or reward that kind of work adequately?
The cost is, quite simply, a less vibrant, less innovative, less interesting society. The integrated framework actually projects a plus 128% increase in patent applications, a measure of technical innovation.
Doubled innovation.
More than doubled.
Yeah.
And maybe even more strikingly, a plus 234% increase in artistic output. Things like music, writing, visual arts. Without a system like CCO that explicitly values and rewards these contributions, we continue to undervalue creative work. And that hinders both individual self-actualization, people being able to pursue their passions, and our collective cultural evolution. We just lose out on potential breakthroughs, unique perspectives, beautiful creations that can enrich all our lives simply because our current economic setup doesn't really know how to value them properly.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, let's talk democracy and trust. The CIP, the Citizen Internet Portal, and the democratic governance built into PTH seem central here. What are the costs of our current systems when it comes to participation and just trust in how things are run locally?
Well, just consider the common failures of, say, traditional homeowners associations, HOAs. They often operate somewhat cynically as totalitarian democracies. Power is concentrated, decisions are made.
With very low turnout often.
Exactly. Participation rates are typically below 10%. Real engagement is minimal. Power consolidates without genuine accountability. Now, CIP and the PTH governance models, they're specifically designed for something closer to 85% participation.
85%. How?
By using better tools.
Things like quadratic voting, which is interesting. It allows you to signal how strongly you feel about an issue by allocating more of your vote credits to it. And liquid democracy, where you can delegate your vote on specific, maybe technical topics to trusted experts or community members whose judgment you value.
So more nuanced voting, more delegation.
Right. The cost of not adopting these kinds of democratic innovations is what we see now. Continued power concentration, a real lack of accountability in local governance, and this widespread decline in civic engagement and trust. People just feel disconnected from the institutions that affect their daily lives.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. Finally, you used this term anti-fragility earlier, describing the integrated system. What are the costs of not having a system designed to actually get stronger or at least hold up under stress? What happens when the next crisis inevitably hits?
That's a crucial point. Our current systems are often inherently brittle, vulnerable to shocks. The integrated framework, in the simulations, demonstrated 94% stability during economic shock absorption tests, and even more dramatically, 156% better outcomes during simulated pandemics compared to traditional baseline systems.
156% better outcomes in a pandemic.
That's what the model showed in terms of things like economic recovery, social cohesion, health outcomes. So the cost of inaction here is this continued, baked-in vulnerability to crises, whether it's the next economic downturn, another public health emergency, or worsening climate impacts. These crises always hit vulnerable populations hardest, leading to greater social disruption, slower recovery, and just amplified suffering across society. It's like we have a fundamental lack of resilience built into our societal fabric right now, making us weaker in the face of the challenges we know are coming.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for us, for you listening? When we really look at the numbers, the comprehensive research you've shared, and try to imagine the human stories behind them, the critique of not adopting a system like CSOO, PTH, SCOP, SCHH, it becomes incredibly clear, doesn't it?
It really does. The cost, it isn't just the upfront capital investment you might need for implementation. That's often the focus, but it's short-sighted. The real cost, the enduring price, is paid in lost human potential, in persistent preventable suffering, in massive systemic inefficiency, and ultimately in a diminished collective future. It's the cost of the society we could have been, the one the simulations show is actually well within our grasp.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the alternative promises so much, eliminating poverty, boosting innovation, strengthening democracy, building resilience, how long can we truly afford to just cling to systems that demonstrably fail to deliver on those fronts? So for you, our listener, maybe the question isn't just what if we did this, but what are we truly sacrificing every day by not doing it?